Hi everybody, welcome to our Module 5 demonstration slash walkthrough. So today what we're going to be doing is going to be going over the editor toolbar and editing properties within ArcGIS. So as you can see on the screen right now, I have kind of a PowerPoint going on that's telling you where certain things are in the editor toolbar. So what we're going to do is actually flip back and forth between this PowerPoint and ArcGIS so that we can kind of see how what's on the slides actually matches what I'll be showing you through the walkthrough. So to get started, this is an introduction to the editor toolbar, and as you guys have already gone over from the Chapter 4 slides, this goes into the whole data input and editing portion of the class. So basically, while I have gone over the different aspects of editing, now we're actually going to go through and do some of these types of editing processes. So this first one, we're just going to get familiar with the editor toolbar. So as you can see, it's its own toolbar, and it has several different features, all of which we're going to at least talk through, if not walk through. And it also tells you what pops up when you do push some of these buttons. So what we're going to start with is the left side of the toolbar, which is where you actually start your editing. So we're going to go to ArcMap. And so this is a blank ArcMap document. And so we're actually going to add some data. And I am going to go ahead and use the data that you guys should be using for your labs, if I can find them. Haha, okay. So we're going to go ahead and do Austin because you guys are actually going to be doing some type of editing on that specific shapefile feature class. Sorry. You guys are going to be editing this specific feature class when you guys are actually doing this in your lab. And so this is not the same feature class that you guys would actually be messing with. So just to make sure that I don't corrupt our data, I'm actually going to save this as a copy. So if you ever want to save data before you mess with it, especially with editing, you can right click on the layer, go to data, and then say export data. And so I'm actually going to save this in the exact same place I was just at, which is the Austin topology, the Austin geodatabase. I'm going to go back in environmental, and I'm going to name this the geology edit test. One of the things you definitely remember whenever you do anything as Arc is make sure you have a naming system for your files that you know you can find later, because it's really, really hard to make changes on the right type of file if you have no idea how to find them. Okay, so now we're going to get started with the editing. So this is the editor toolbar, and I'm going to pop this out. And as you can see, everything right now is blocked out. That's because in order to even start editing, you actually have to tell Arc that's what you're doing. In order to do that, you click on Editor, and you say Start Editing. Now, typically, if you have several different shapefiles, it will actually ask you what you are going to be editing. So when you start editing, you're actually going to be asked what feature you want to start editing. So I only have the one feature class right now on my map, but say I had several, this start editing window would pop up, and you would actually have to choose which one of these shapefiles you want to edit. Now what's odd about ArcGIS is, say you have stuff saved in two different places, like this is obvious here. You have two different sources. You have to specify which source you're working out of, and then also specify which shapefile or feature class you're working off of. So once you get that all set, then we end up back here, and as you can see, things have actually opened up and are visible now. So this little arrow is your edit tool, and this is essentially like your normal pointing arrow or your select elements arrow, except this one is specifically for editing. So for example, say that I clicked on that feature, I am telling Arc that I want to edit this specific feature. And this is where these come in. So you can edit vertices. So if I double click on that, all of those little things are vertices. So say I zoom into a couple. you can actually select one of those and you can move it. And it will essentially move your boundaries for that polygon. Now in this case, we want this to stay the same because obviously we're trying to keep this mostly intact. So if you do Control Z, it undoes whatever you did. Basic, undo principle. Another thing that you have is the reshape tool. This is actually where you can go in and reshape the polygon. So I basically deleted all of that area just based on the reshaping boundary that I made. You can also do Control Z to undo that. So then there's also the split polygon. And so say that I zoom out again, you can actually split a polygon. So now, instead of having one big polygon, I have two. But say I want to undo that, then Control Z will also undo what you just did. Another thing to keep in mind too is say that we are actually adding a feature. So that's where this whole create features comes in. So if you open this toolbar and we move the toolbar with it, what you can do is this is the shapefile we're editing. So you would click on it. And then say that we wanted to add a polygon to this. What we would do is do the rectangle, circle, ellipse, freehand, whatever it is that you guys are planning on adding. Now say for example that we want to actually add on to this little area at the end. That's where autocomplete would come in. So we would go to the autocomplete polygon, and before you do anything you want to set your snapping tolerance. So first we go to snapping and we do our toolbar. And you want 10 pixels in this case is fine for demonstration purposes, but you need to be very careful about what your snapping tolerance is, because if you're working in a very specific area, if it's not small enough, then it won't actually complete polygons correctly. So for this one though, it's okay, we can just go ahead and go with 10 pixels. And so what these are is these will actually snap your editor arrow to a specific thing. So you have points snapped. If you watch this little hash, it automatically should snap to a point vertice. Because there aren't actually any points in this specific shapefile, it's not actually going to get snapped to anything. So we'll say undo. Now say we want end snapping. That would be the end of any of the polygons. So as you can see, when there is a little box around the hash mark you're using, that means that it's actually snapping to something. So in this case, it's snapping to an endpoint of one of the polygons. You can also use vertex snapping, which is anything that has a vertex, something will be snapped to. And then you can have line or edge snapping. And this would be this little line here would basically serve as one long vertex that your hash mark could be snapped to. So in this case though, I actually just want vertex snapping because I want to use specifically that vertex right there. So I'm going to go back to autocomplete and see how it's snapping already. So we're going to set, first of all, we're going to clear, and then we're going to snap to that, and I'm just going to make a really odd polygon. Now because this is an autocomplete, this should automatically fill in everything that is to the right of what I just created. So we're going to go ahead and double click. And there you go. So now you have a new polygon that fills in the entire area that you just made an autocomplete polygon for. Now I don't actually want this, but we're going to keep it just for purposes' sakes, and this is why you make copies of everything. Say that you accidentally deleted something. You can't get that back once you stop editing. So always make copies of your data no matter what, just in case something gets corrupted, or if you're doing, especially if you're doing editing, you don't edit something that you have to go back and completely redo. It's not worth the hassle. So now what we're going to do is, now that we've actually created a feature, there's this little bar right here where you can go straight to attributes. And so this actually shows you the attributes of the feature you just created. Now, this is where you would actually be able to fill in something that you were doing. So for example, say that you had made all these polygons, which are geology types, but you're adding more to them. Arc doesn't automatically know what you're adding, so you would actually have to go in here and say, this is the new unit name, or this is the new perimeter, and this is the new Texas ID that I'm going to use to actually ID where this is. So that's where this attributes little table comes in. So if we go back to the PowerPoint, we're going to talk about moving a feature. So we're going to go back to Arc. Basically what moving a feature is exactly what it sounds like. You select a feature and you physically move it. Now, this is not always a good thing to do with polygons, but say that you have a point that is in the exact wrong spot. This would be one of the easiest ways to make sure that it just goes where it needs to. As always, if you move something accidentally, whoops, you always can do Control-Z and it will move everything back in place. Now let's talk about rotating features. So sometimes this is useful if, say that you have a polygon shapefile of buildings, and that's definitely not rotated the way that it should be. And that could be for several reasons, like someone made those building polygons with a different type of imagery background than what you have. What you can do is actually select a feature. If I can get this to work. And then what you want to do is click on this little rotate tool. Now this actually has to be available in order for you to use it, but typically it is. And so you would just rotate it to wherever you think that polygon needs to go. Once again, if you mess something up, you can always do Control-Z. Now for splitting lines, which is what we kind of did with the polygon, except this is what you would do for lines, you do the same aspect where, if you remember, what I did is I came here and I literally just drew a line through the polygon and it split the polygon for me. Same concept with lines, except lines are a singular feature or one-dimensional, and so you're not actually going to end up having a polygon attribute afterwards, you're just going to have two line segments. So then the next thing we can talk about is editing the context menus. And so basically you have two different things that you can edit. You can edit vertex, like we talked about, or you can actually edit the types of sketching that you're doing. And so in this case, this is important because say that you need to fix some of these vertices in here because they're just not lining up correctly. So we're going to go in here. And what you can do is actually make sure that your selection tool is clicked. You can actually right click on a vertex and say delete, or you can say move, or you can actually move the vertices to a very specific XY location. And this is good to say for the point issue again, or even if you know that a boundary starts a certain place and it's not there, you can physically tell, or you can digitally tell the program, this vertex is not in the right XY coordinate, I need you to move it here. And it'll automatically do that for you. You can also delete a sketch while you're messing with vertices, or even finish sketches. So say that you're doing a sketch one segment at a time. Once you're done, you can just say, I'm done. So that's what the editing context menus are. You won't be using these too in-depth on your basic editing labs, but for the most part, this is what you would be using if you need to be very specific about where things need to go, rather than you just physically moving the vertices yourself and kind of going blindly. And then this also goes back to the vertex menu. So as long as you have a selected polygon that shows the little green dots, you can manipulate the vertices all you want. However, if you click off of that, if those dots are not showing up, then you have not selected the polygon in a way that will let you mess with those vertexes or vertices. So always remember that you have to double click in order to get those to show up. Now another thing to keep in mind too is you guys aren't just limited to doing rectangles or basic shapes when editing, and you also aren't limited to only being able to use certain types of segment tools. And so that's where your different types of editing options come in. So we're going to put this back in here. And as you can see, if you did a rectangle, you could literally make a rectangle, and that would be your new feature. Say that you want something more complex though. That's where these sketching tools come in. So you can actually control the type of edge connecting the vertices with the different types of tools you have. Now, this is great when you have a more complex shape going on. So for example, you can do straight segments. If you need a specific angle to be really accurate, so you need exactly 90 degrees, you have a right angles function, which is this one right here. You can also do midpoints, and you can even do curved features. So if we go back here and I want this, and I say that I want to actually create a new feature. So if you click on polygon, so with rectangle this won't work because rectangles obviously don't have curves. If you select polygon though, that means that you can make that polygon whatever shape you want, and that's where these start to come in. So this would be an endpoint arc segment. So you would actually have an endpoint that is part of an arc that you're creating. We're not going to do that though. What we're going to do is the polygon function. So the default for polygons is the trace function, which I've got highlighted. And basically what that means is you basically trace out whatever you want, and however your vertices show up, that's what it looks like. If you push F2, then it creates the feature. Now, say that we want something more complex. I want an arc segment. It will actually bend based on where you are putting the segments. And you can actually make a circle this way. You can also do it by going over here. I'm obviously making a very oddly shaped polygon with the different arcs. But that actually gives you an option to say you want a very oddly shaped curved feature. That's how you would get that. And if you double click, that automatically creates your feature for you. So we're going to undo those two. Then you can also do a different curve segment, so it will have a curve in that shape. And then you can also do intersections. So basically if there's an implied intersection, then that's what you would use. If you need a right angle, that will automatically give you a right angle polygon, so a essentially triangular polygon, but it will make sure that this angle right here is always 90 degrees. So that's what basic editing is like, and that kind of goes over the different types of sketch tools you guys have. So now we're going to go into something slightly different, and this is important when you are creating data. So all of this data that I've been using is stuff that was already developed. So you guys are given this information and you just kind of edit what's already there. If you need to create new information, that's where you start coming into creating new feature classes. So this is an interesting walkthrough because sometimes you actually need a blank feature class to do things, because say that you don't want geology, but you need something that coincides with geology, like soil polygons, or you have a study area and you know where the study area is, but you need to know where it is in comparison to your layer. That's where developing your own feature class would come in. So you actually have to create this first. So you have to create a blank feature class. Excuse me. So we're going to go back to Austin. So I'm going to go to my catalog, which is this. I'm going to stick it over here. And I'm working out of this folder. I'm in Austin. And so what I'm going to do is actually go into this environmental one. And this is how you create a new feature class. You go to New and you say Feature Class. First of all, something to remember, save your edits so that they stick, and then stop editing. You cannot make a new feature class if you are currently editing. So we're going to try this again. So new feature class. We're going to call this our study area. When you do naming, remember to never have spaces, always do an underscore or hash. And we're going to make this a polygon feature because I'm actually going to use it to show an area that I'm working on. Default's fine. In this case, we don't actually care about anything, but say that you have several sites in your feature class, you could say site number. And it would be a short integer. So say you have 5 sites. So we'll make 5 different sites that you're going to do sampling from. So now you have a study area shapefile. Now if you click this off, you will see that there is nothing there. That is because there is nothing in this feature class. So you have to create it. So we're going to turn this back on. So this is where you start editing again. And when you go to create features, you actually have to select study area. But say that we're going to do 5 rectangular study area sites that you're going to sample from. And I want one here. So then I would go to attributes, and for the site number, I want to say this is site 1. Then I'm going to make another one here. And this is going to be site 2. And then say I want a circular site for whatever reason. We're going to be site 3. We're going to do an ellipse. This one's odd because it actually does it based on the ellipse of the axis you're going on. So that'll be 4. And then we're just going to do a regular polygon again down here of our own sizing. And that'll be 5. So now if we go into the attribute table, all of a sudden you have a site number filled in. Also, because this is a feature class, you automatically get the shape length or the shape perimeter and the shape area in meters because that is what your Geog database is already based in. So now if we go to save edits and then stop editing, that becomes permanent information. So that is how you would create your own feature class and then actually populate it with different types of features. So that would be data input and editing, and you guys will actually be doing this for your labs. So hopefully this gets you guys on a good start, and if you guys have any questions in class, just let me know. Have a great day.